Everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 162 of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Happy Thanksgiving to all of my American listeners. It's interesting. I have a lot of people not from America who listen to the show. I didn't even know that there were countries that spoke English outside of America. I'm from Illinois. You know, we don't do geography and stuff. I didn't know that there were other countries speaking English. Who knew? I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I assume that people recognize that I'm joking when I say stuff like that. But I also know a lot of people's opinions of like the intelligence level in the Midwest. And, so I could see people believing and being like, oh man, wow, Josh really is stupid. And I am, don't get me wrong. But man, what a great way to start the Thanksgiving episode. I was going to do an episode on football and jiu-jitsu, like American football, because I have a really good one planned. And I thought it'd be a really good fit because it's Thanksgiving and people watch football that never watch football, but it just wasn't the right time. We'll get to it. I think when we get closer to the Super Bowl, we'll get on it. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys, though. I'll give you something I'm thankful for before I complain for the whole hour of this episode. Really quick, good thankful thing is for those 5-star reviews that you guys have given me and the people that have given me those 5-star reviews. I would love if you have not given me a 5-star review, or if you just happen to have another podcast listening platform. I'm not above getting the same 5-star review over 2 platforms from the same person, right? I'm cool with that. Whatever you guys want to do. Maybe you're just like, you're off work today and you're just like feeling really thankful in your heart, and you're thankful for this absolutely free show that I have been giving you every Thursday for this year consistently. And maybe you could reward that with a 5-star review. If not, if you're busy on Thanksgiving, I get it. It's too much work. But you really could do it. If you really listen, I'll tell you guys this. Give me a 5-star review if you believe that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Let's get into this episode. I thought I would do something different for Thanksgiving. It's not every day that you get to release an episode on Thanksgiving Day. And I thought I could do an episode on thankfulness. But then I decided it would be a lot more fun to do an episode on things that make me angry. And so I just wrote down a few things, a few random topics. It's just a random show. The theme will not be me being angry. At least I don't think it will. We'll see how we unpack a few things. But some of the stuff will be things that make me angry. And I thought a great place to start on this episode, because it's that time of year. It's about to be Christmas time, guys. Today, if you're listening in America, for all of us, Christmas is after Thanksgiving, right? It starts after Thanksgiving. Maybe for you guys, honestly, it starts for me after Halloween. Or it starts for me while I'm trying to get ready for Halloween by watching all of the Halloween movies that I love, Hocus Pocus, Halloween Town, those type of things. When I'm watching all of those things and then I run out of things to watch, it's about time to watch Home Alone and then Elf. It's Christmas time. And not only that, it's about time to watch the most important Christmas movie, the movie that really is about the meaning of Christmas, that I think we all should, with our families on Christmas Day, sit down and watch together. And that is, of course, Die Hard. And for those of you who have just joined the show this year, and you don't know that just one of the big key points of the show in my life has been trying to battle a black belt named Ezra Lennon, who doesn't believe that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. We've got to bring Ezra on sometime before the end of the year, sometime before Christmas, so we can discuss this, because it's ridiculous that anyone would think otherwise. I can't even bring this guy on the show to spread propaganda. I let people of any race, religion, gender, any belief come on the show if they have a love for jujitsu, and I think that we can get something out of the episode. And honestly, we could probably get a lot out of the Ezra Lennon episode, but I just don't know if I want my name tied with somebody who does not believe that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It's on Christmas. I mean, that right there. But as you guys know, I could talk about this forever. If you're just joining the show, this happens every year. So for the next month, you'll hear about it more than you should. Here's a good one. On my notes, I put kids these days. That was all I put on my notes to now discuss this thing about kids these days that angers me. All right, so kids these days, and I include myself. Okay, when I'm saying kids, I understand at 28 years old, a lot of people say, "Hey, you're a kid." Yes, I agree. I'm talking about my generation too. I'm talking about pretty much anybody I know 40 and under. And let me preface this. I have a podcast that is basically based on saying that people are wrong about jujitsu. And, that's something that I talk about a lot. But there's something I don't do that most kids these days really, really do. And this is in jujitsu. This is on the mat. This is in any circle that I kind of am in. I like to cook. So I see this in cooking. I see this on YouTube with cooking. I see this in content creation. You see this a lot in content creation. But it's just this idea that right now, we are really, really smart. Right now, we know more about ... than we ever have before. And that may be true. But the level of arrogance from that thinking is then pushed on, well, we can't learn anything from the generation before us because they have this one thing wrong that we now know to be true. So I'll give it some jujitsu examples. I am anti-shrimping up and down the mats. I think that it's a waste of your time. If you want to do it on your own time, yeah, heck yeah, do it. But if you're making all of us shrimp up and down the mats, and my reason behind it is because that movement that we do is not really even the important part of the move. The important part of the move is getting on your side with a human being on top of you and not being flat on your back. That is the actual hard part of the move. And unless you have a human being on top of you, you cannot practice that. And so that is my argument for it, right? There are black belts that really have other parts of jiu-jitsu figured out, that still have just maybe never asked themselves or just like to stick with tradition, or it's just something it's an easily accomplishable thing for a lot of people that lets them feel like they're learning jiu-jitsu, regardless of why they do it. But there are a lot of good black belts, good coaches that still do it. If I were to think I cannot learn anything from these people because that one thing, because they still shrimp up and down the mats, I am missing out on so many great opinions and so many great ideas because I am too arrogant to say, hey, what if I'm wrong about shrimping up and down the mats? What if I'm wrong about your getting on your side being the more important thing? So many young people now, and like I said, when I say young, I mean 40 and under, think that everyone older than them, because they grew up in a generation that was different. Keep in mind, the world is changing more now than it ever has. It is changing faster now than it ever has. I grew up without internet. The next generation that I am dealing with, that I am talking to, that's going to look at me like I'm in elderly moron, like we have been looking at the older generation than us. They grew up in a different world than I did. We're going to have very differing opinions on a lot of things. And what the worst thing that they could do is say, because you didn't grow up the way that I did and you don't understand technology the way that I do, you have nothing to offer. And it's probably not just kids. It's probably everybody does this. But I really think it is this bad human condition where we are so certain that now we are infinitely intelligent. But like 20 years ago, which is everything that we've based all of our ideas off now, 20 years ago, those people were idiots, right? And maybe I'm just being angry about something I shouldn't be. Maybe it's good that people are always trying to innovate and be brand new with ideas, but I just see it so much in jiu-jitsu. Even people that probably listen to the show. There are people that probably listen to the show that I say something that they disagree, their coach disagrees with, and they go, okay, well, I like Josh and his podcast, so I'm going to listen to him and not my coach about this thing. And that's totally okay. But when you then say, well, now Josh is 100% right and my coach is 100% wrong, and so now I can't trust anytime there's any different opinion between my coach and Josh, I can't trust my coach. Hey, your coach knows you way better than I know you. What if, because your coach can actually see jiu-jitsu as a whole, because they've actually done jiu-jitsu for 10, 15 years and they know the whole picture of what's going on, maybe the reason that they're giving you advice is due to your certain situation or your certain goals. And so maybe that's why your coach and I have a differing opinion. I guess that was from kids these days. I just think that it would be a lot better for a lot of us in jiu-jitsu if we stopped thinking that we were now enlightened and now we know. If at any point in my jiu-jitsu, if I had done that, I wouldn't be where I am now. I would have stopped learning. And where I am now, I'm going to assume 5 years from now, my opinions are going to be totally different and they're going to fit whatever I need them to. But that doesn't mean that I was an idiot now. So stop treating people that are older who maybe some of their details aren't there. Maybe they do still believe that you can only play closed guard on bottom. And maybe that's not where you should be learning from them, though. Maybe they know how to help you get better at something else. Maybe they have details about closed guard because they believe it's the only position. They have details about closed guard that if you were cool with just going, okay, I'll play closed guard for a few months, you could learn so much more than with a progressive coach that lets you, do the reverse classroom thing and things like that. Right. So I guess kids these days, piece of advice, learn what you can from everybody. It's so much easier for me to be able to paint the whole picture of my jiu-jitsu because I get so many different opinions and I get so many different perspectives. And it lets me say, okay, well, I now know for sure I don't like that. Or, hey, my opinion has changed because now I actually understand what these guys are talking about when they say ... I don't know if that made any sense. Let's talk about adult versus master, meaning the age divisions in jiu-jitsu. We can even throw juvenile in there too. We can look at all these different age groups. Let's start with the kids. Okay. So there are parents that are like, yeah, if my kid was, was an adult size, they would be able to beat black belts. No, it's just not true. Uh, that is, and don't quote me on Mika Goval or someone like that. Mika was beating black belts at 13. And so, if your kid can beat black belts, then they can beat black belts. If they can't, it's not because, oh, well, they're technique wise, they're probably as good as the purple belts and the brown belts. No, not true. And my reasoning behind it is simple. Jiu-jitsu is different when you were that size. When you're 8 years old, watch Mount in an 8-year-old division. It is unescapable. The only thing more unescapable than Mount is close guard. The leg strength to upper body strength ratio and the size of the hips to leg length ratio, there is something to it. I've watched a ton of kids jiu-jitsu matches. It is a different sport. Obviously, we're using knee cuts, we're using arm bars, we're using all kinds of other things, but the sport is so different. Your kid can beat up other kids. That's the end of it, right? And then we'll look up to the next age group, juvenile, like teenager. Now, here's the thing about juvenile. For most juvenile tournaments, you have to compete at like blue belt, right? If you have trained for any period of time and you got you got some of your kids colored belts, as you came up, most likely when you turn 16, you start competing as a blue belt. Every once in a while, you'll stay like white belt and then eventually get your blue. But for most kids that are in jiu-jitsu for a while and are coming up through the young age groups, they get their blue belt. Now that division can be black belt level. It isn't always, but at the highest level of IBJJF, if you see a kid winning like juvenile worlds nowadays, most likely they're ungodly good. Most likely they could beat almost any purple belt. And the reason I say this is just because the kids that are there did train for 12 years. They've trained since 4 years old, and now they're 16 and they are developing into their body and they are starting to learn jiu-jitsu with that amount of physicality. And yeah, man, the skill level is insane at kids juvenile. And you think at blue belt, that's the top level that they're allowed to be at 16 years old. So if you're 16, those are the best 16-year-olds, and a lot of them have black belt dads, and they have been training since birth. So that level is really high. And then you get to adult, and this is a conversation, an argument I see all the time is, are masters divisions as hard as adult divisions? Of course, it is going to just depend on the division. In general, like blue belt, purple belt adult is going to be much harder than the masters divisions at those belts. As you get to brown belt, and then you get to black belt, as a whole, of course, the adult division is going to be harder. It's just a bigger age range, right? Anybody can do adult, whether you're 30, 40, 18, anybody can do adult. So you're just drawing from a bigger group of younger, more athletic people. But to say if somebody wins like Master 1, Master 2, Master Worlds, those people could definitely win a lot of stuff at black belt. And lately, black belt adult. Lately, we've been seeing people that are winning a lot of stuff at both. You're seeing Josh Hinger did ADCC and did Master 1 or maybe even Master 2 at Master Worlds, right? That's a tough division. That's a really tough grappler, right? That's one of the best grapplers in the world. Now, to say that every single division is like that, no, it is not. But do not discount people that are competing at master, especially at black belt. Black belt is high level no matter what age group it is. It is hard to win no matter what age group it is. the steroid use is off the rails no matter what age group it is. Dude, sometimes you'll see a master's division, you'll see a master one division, and it it looks like there is more steroid use than when I do adult black belt and I get to fight guys that look 40 or 50 pounds heavier than me in my weight class. That it's crazy to see. I was trying to not do any conversation at all about steroid use on this one, but you just can't talk jiu-jitsu competition without talking about steroids. But anyway, yes, adult and master, they are not the same thing. But to say that always the adult division, there have been times that I've done IBJJF opens and I've been in the adult division and I've won it, and then looked up at master one in my weight class and been like, ooh, I wonder if I could have won that. Some of these guys are better, right? I think at the lower belts, there is a big difference. At the lower belts, when you are in your 40s and you're competing at an adult IBJJF tournament, you're competing against 18 and 19-year-old kids that believe that they are going to be the next Gordon Ryan. And they have the training schedule and the lack of responsibilities. And so they're able to just kind of go after it, get after it a lot more than you can. So yes, at the blue and the purple belt levels, I would say that there is a difference, but still, I remember coaching Eric Hebner at purple and brown, and we would let him choose by which would be harder matchups, which division he should do, whether adult or master one. And we did a lot of master one tournaments because they were just better guys to fight. And so, to discount anybody for winning a tournament at any age group, I think is silly. Focus on your own accomplishments. Usually it's the people that are not competing that are really worried that a Masters world champion is calling himself a world champion. All right, now we'll look at a few more questions other than just aggressive rants. So first question, should you beat up the guy on his trial? Meaning, let's say you're a 6-month white belt and you've been getting beat down every day. And then all of a sudden, the new Facebook advertisement that coach is doing is starting to work. And there's a new guy. He's about your size. He's about your age. And he comes in wanting to learn some jiu-jitsu. Signs the waiver. His mistake. Should you beat that guy down? Yeah, of course you should beat that guy down. No. I don't think you should always beat the guy on his free trial down. It just depends, obviously, on the situation. If the person on their free trial is like a 130-pound woman, she probably isn't like coming in going, yeah, I'm going to beat everybody up in this class. Jiu-jitsu won't work on me. I've been grappling with my buddies, right? That's probably not the internal thought process. And so beating that person up would probably just make her go, yeah, jiu-jitsu is exactly what I expected it to be. It's a bunch of meatheads. I'm never coming back. Now, that being said, and that could go the same for a very small guy too. That being said, when this guy comes in and he's talking about how he was an ex-football player and he's going to be good at jiu-jitsu now, and he's just trying to roll. Yeah, you absolutely should beat that person up. But here's the thing. How can you beat that person up while showing that jiu-jitsu works? Well, you have to use jiu-jitsu. If you go and you fight to the absolute death, tooth and nail, and you do eventually submit this person, and you're both scorched, does it really even show that jiu-jitsu works? Now, if you go and you tie him up in close guard and he starts to get wore out and you hit one single sweep and then you get to mount and he continues to get wore out and you stay in mount and he's gassed and then you finish him. You did it effortlessly or as close to effortlessly as possible. Do you think that now he knows that jiu-jitsu works? Of course he knows now. Because jiu-jitsu, it needs to be effortless, right? It needs to be felt. So that is kind of my opinion on beating up the trial guy is, can you beat them up in a way that does not hurt them and does not use all of your physical attributes? Can you beat them up with jiu-jitsu? If so, yes, then you probably should beat them up, because getting beat up with jiu-jitsu really isn't getting beat up, right? Now, if you cannot beat this person up with jiu-jitsu, probably avoid the free trial guy, because all you're going to do is hurt him, hurt yourself, and embarrass your coach, my coach, all of us, right? We got something. We got to uphold a standard here. Okay. So if you can't beat somebody up with jiu-jitsu, then I don't think you should try, on their free trial class when we should be selling somebody if jiu-jitsu works. Should you lose your black belt if you suck? No. Belts just shouldn't exist at all in jiu-jitsu. They don't make any sense. There's no standard to skill for a black belt. There's no standard to not being a terrible human being for a black belt. And for a lot of people, it's just something that goes right to their head. All kinds of black belts will say too, like, yeah, I don't, you shouldn't worry about belts. You shouldn't worry about belts. I'm like, yeah, well, would you let us take your black belt away? No, you wouldn't. You care about it a whole lot. You shouldn't worry about belts. I think that everybody is focused on belts in jiu-jitsu, including black belts, or most people are, including most black belts are really worried about their belt. And the problem with that is, this is, in my opinion, why you have a lot of coaches that don't go compete. Well, what if you go and compete as a coach and you just get beat up? Your students are going to doubt you and they're going to be like, oh, this person's not a black belt. Great reference back to the beginning rant where I said kids these days. But when you go out as a coach, you do have that chance. You could go get embarrassed and all of your students could leave. They could be like, this guy sucks, right? And so, I don't think that it really, it's very easy to hide that you're not a black belt. So really, it's not very valuable. It's not a really great measuring stick as who you are as a human or as who you are as a grappler, just because there's no standard. And so really, we should just do away with them and start our own standard. This is what we'll do. All the belts the same, except we get rid of brown belt. Brown belts shouldn't exist. I know I said just a second ago that no belts should exist, but hey, this is a random show. I just give opinions, and sometimes my opinion changes mid-episode. But yeah, brown belt shouldn't exist. That's actually, I was being facetious when I said no belt should exist, but brown belt doesn't make any sense. A person who got to their brown belt, they really are black belt, in my opinion. They should be, or at least that should be the standard of brown belt. It's not always like that, but that should be the standard of the other belts, right? Your blue belt is kind of your, hey, I understand base knowledge of this. I understand what the positions are and what the fights from the positions are and should be. As you get to your purple belt, you start to develop your own strategies and your own way of thinking about jiu-jitsu, your own way of doing jiu-jitsu. And by brown belt, you should be seeing jiu-jitsu as a whole. And I think that is what a black belt is, right? Is seeing jiu-jitsu as a whole. I always had trouble with my criteria of brown belt. I've never had trouble with my criteria of blue and purple belt and black belt, but brown belt was always hard because I've always expected the same things out of my brown belts as I expected from my black belts. Maybe we make brown belt like probation. I was thinking prohibition. I was like, nah, that's not it. I don't know how brown belts and prohibitions really could be going together. But maybe brown belt's just like probation black belt. Yeah, that'll be our new jiu-jitsu. We'll call it Josh Jitsu. Let's start it together. I think it's a good idea. Anyway, how about, should I leave my coach if he disagrees with the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show? We talked about this earlier. Yes, you absolutely should leave your coach if he disagrees with anything I say. No, no, you shouldn't. I think that a lot of the times there aren't really reasons to leave people's coach um, when it comes to like skill. There are sometimes, I'm sure, maybe there's a better gym in your area or something, then maybe you should leave your school. But just leaving a coach because you disagree with something that they think when it comes to skill, right? Not morally. I think that if you do disagree on a moral level with your coach, you probably should leave. You probably should talk about it if it is a relationship that matters to you. But yeah, you probably should leave. But most of the time, people just leave because they're around their coach so much and they hear every single thing that he or she says. And then they start to nitpick the things that are wrong or the things that they don't agree with. And then it just kind of bubbles up and it ends up being a way bigger problem than it needs to be. I would say to really pay attention. Sometimes, a lot of the times, you have a problem with your coach or your gym, and it is your problem. It is because you are expecting something out of the gym that you're just not going to get. You're expecting a level of understanding that you're going to need to find or start trying to find on your own, and you're expecting your coach to hand feed you that forever, and it's just not going to happen. I don't know any coach that's able to do that. Any coach that's able to teach you every single lesson that you are going to need to know. A lot of lessons are learned through the struggles of being on the mat. And a lot of lessons are picked up through the purple belt that's giving you advice and through the brown belt that gives you advice and the blue belt that adopted you when you were a white belt. And, that is where most of us start to get our opinion of jiu-jitsu. And your coach also has 100 other people that they are trying to share with. And so I guess the answer is, should I leave my coach if he disagrees with I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu? Probably, but most likely you shouldn't leave your coach in general just because you disagree with them on something about skill or something like that. As you get better, you should be able to train a little more on your own and be able to figure out how you learn better anyway. And even though that might not fit what your coach does, it's not a big deal. My coach and I don't train and teach the exact same way, and it doesn't matter. We still have great conversation about jiu-jitsu, great discussion about jiu-jitsu. We're able to help each other because we don't train the exact same way. And so, thinking in those terms. What about, here's something, this actually wasn't a question, but it was things, it was back to the things that make me angry. Cops that don't do jiu-jitsu. I assume if you're a police officer, you're listening to the show, you train, right? I'm always curious, and feel free to write me anonymously, Josh at simplifyingjujitsu.com. I'm always curious, is it just me who doesn't really like a lot of the cops that don't train? Or do police officers who train not like cops who don't train? I hope that made sense, that question. The reason I ask this is because I've seen it a lot. I've hung out with students that are police officers and seen them around a lot of other police officers, and they don't treat them the same way that they treat the police officers that train at the gym. They don't joke with them the same way. They don't have the same camaraderie as they do, even though the police officers at my gym maybe are from different departments. But I've just noticed that like my guys that train tend to not like a lot of the officers that don't. And this is hilarious. One time there was this guy that came in. he was a trial class. Back to, should you beat up people on a trial class? If a guy comes in and he is telling not just me, but everybody about how tough he is because he's a police officer and how he's taken down guys that are 300 pounds and how tough this person is, that person needs to feel that jiu-jitsu works. And so I had a situation like this one time, and this guy, he had come in, that those things, taking down 300-pound men, just tough as nails, right? Just the toughest, like pretty much like Arnold Schwarzenegger in RoboCop, this guy, right? And it's no-gi, so you're not seeing any belts, and he rolls with the guy. And this guy thrashes him. This guy's also only been training for a year too, right? It's not like he's been training for a long period of time. It's not like I'm giving you one of the black belts and he's beating you down. You're like losing to a guy that you shouldn't be losing to, if your job is to be able to subdue people, if that is a huge part, a huge piece of your job. And anyway, so this police officer gets beat down, and we're sitting on the sideline. I can see it. His whole worldview is crumbling, right? Every day when he looked in the mirror, he was sure that he was the toughest guy in the world. And then all of a sudden, this guy who's his size, who knows some secret martial art, is able to beat him. And then I see them start to talk, and I'm like trying to get close because I know what conversation is about to happen. And first the police officer goes, "Hey, how long have you been doing this?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I've been doing this for a year." And I can see it. Cop is not happy. He is like, this is ridiculous. And then he asks the worst question he could have asked in that situation. And he said, "What do you do for a living?" And the guy looks at him and says, "I'm a nurse." And the macho just drained from this poor police officer's face. And I think this is a situation that has happened to a lot of police officers who do train. There's nothing wrong with this situation happening. It's how you respond to that first beating of jiu-jitsu. Some of my favorite students are my police officer students that I beat them up on day one, or somebody beat them up on day one, and I could see it on their face. It wasn't fear that struck them. It was excitement. It was finally, if I can learn to do this, oh my gosh, right? And so, therefore, that's why I don't like police officers that don't train jiu-jitsu, is because at this point, maybe they just haven't been around it. You can't get mad at somebody for being ignorant of something, right? Just being so unaware of something. But I think you can get mad at guys that job, it requires them to carry a gun, and they hope to not have to use it, and they hope to be able to protect it. And they go into a room where a bunch of people can easily, where you're getting beat up by high school students easily. And then you respond with, "Well, I'm never coming back here again." I don't think that's a good response. Obviously, this is my opinion. I'm not a police officer. I don't know. But I think that it would be really helpful if we had a lot more police officers that train jiu-jitsu. And not to put it on you guys, but we have people that listen to this show that are police officers, and they have all kinds of friends that don't train that they wish did. And they, have a whole department that doesn't train, possibly, that they wish did. Look, these guys aren't going to listen to me about coming and trying jiu-jitsu. Like I said, I'm not a police officer. I've never done this before. I have nothing in common. Now, you, on the other hand, you could have a jiu-jitsu podcast, It could be free. It could be easy for you to make. You can talk into your phone about the importance of police officers and training jujitsu. You could talk to your friends that are police officers that train jujitsu. How many more officers could you get to train if you did that, right? I'm giving the example of police, but that last question that I had, and this is random, I don't know why this is the last question that I decided to use, was, should I start a jiu-jitsu podcast? I think the answer for most people, probably. The reason I think that is because I've gotten a lot better at jiu-jitsu from my podcast, from the conversations that I had. Maybe you don't have to do one like me where it's teaching, but still you could even dive deeper into the jiu-jitsu niche of, police officers that train. Imagine again, if you were to do that, how many, and I know there are podcasts out that are for police officers who train, but are they the best? Could you make one better? Could you fill that hole in jiu-jitsu? Maybe you could. Maybe you should. My dad, this is always, my dad always says, whatever breaks your heart is your job to fix, right? And I know that I have a lot of broken-hearted police officers who wish their department trained. And it's kind of your job to fix. Funny thing about that saying, one of my students was giving me a hard time about something. I don't know. I wasn't listening. And I hit him with the what breaks your heart is your job to fix, and told him we better start trying to fix it. And he's like, I go, yeah, my dad always says that. And he goes, man, that's such a pastor answer right there. I was like, it really is. It really is. It does go hand in hand. I think I should do an episode one day with my dad about how much running a church and running a jiu-jitsu school have in common, and how much more effectively you could run a church if you could beat people up like you do in a jiu-jitsu school. But I think that's all the randomness that I have for you guys today. Hope you guys got something out of this one, and hope you guys have a very happy Thanksgiving. And that is the episode. Thank you guys for listening to this one. This was a random one. This felt very random. I just thought maybe it was time for a random show. I needed to talk out a few ideas with some aggression, and then I figured that it'll help with some episodes in the lead up to next year. I think there's going to be some changes for the show. I know that I'm going to make some changes for the show next year that are going to be really good and really, I think, helpful for all of us, hopefully. Definitely helpful for me, but hopefully helpful for you guys too. That's all I have for you guys today. Hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, if that's not a thing for you, hope you have a great Thursday. Hope you have a great rest of your day. That's all I have. I hope, is there anything else I hope besides having a great Thanksgiving? I hope whether or not you celebrate Thanksgiving, that you are thankful for the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show and you give them a 5-star review. I hope that you guys enjoy your Thursday. And most importantly, I hope that today's episode helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.